You know, guys, I love making Let's Play broadcasts. I love making these baseball broadcasts that come out every single day. It really is a lot of fun. But I wish I could do it better. I wish that I were more engaging. I wish that I had a better way of telling stories, crafting narratives, and things like that. I really wish that I could broadcast like Vin Scully. You know who Vin Scully was. Vin Scully, the famous broadcaster of the Dodgers for over 50 years. Vin Scully, the man who did the old NBC Game of the Week in the 80s that so many people loved. The man who did so many World Series broadcasts for CBS, that Vin Scully. So I decided to start with a little project here. We're going to look at two games that are relatively nondescript. We have Game 2 of the 1988 World Series and Game 2 of the 2023 World Series. Now, I've only looked at the top of the first inning of both games, as well as some of the pregame stuff. And I've learned 4 lessons, 4 things that are helpful for those of us who want to broadcast baseball games on YouTube. So we'll go ahead and start off with this. Number 1 is building engagement from the beginning. This is going to be interesting. Now, you need to know the reason why I chose both of these games is because Game 1 of the 1988 World Series ended on a famous home run that was Kirk Gibson, right? We all know that story. Game 1 of the 2023 World Series ended on Adolis Garcia's home run, another story that most of us know. But check out this contrast between how Vin Scully talked about the beginning of Game 2 and how the Fox broadcasters talk about the beginning of Game 2. We'll look at Scully first.
There's a heat wave as we start the Fall Classic here in Los Angeles. Temperatures in the 90s today as we await the start of Game 2 of the 1988 World Series. Hi, everybody. I'm Vin Scully, along with Joe Garagiola, and like everybody in the United States and maybe around the world, still in shock over the home run by Kirk Gibson.
And now we'll go take a look at Fox.
Well, who said Rangers Diamondbacks wasn't going to be any good? How about that thriller of a Game 1 and now Game 2 from Arlington, Texas? It's the Rangers trying to take command of this series while the Diamondbacks try to push it back to Phoenix. All
right, did you see the difference there? The difference is that Vin Scully leads off with the weather, whereas Fox leads off with, this wasn't such a bad World Series, and wasn't that game yesterday great? Now, Scully does talk about Kirk Gibson at the top, but only very, very briefly, whereas Fox continued to drone on and on about that. But think about the very, very first line more than anything else. Scully tells you what the weather's like in Los Angeles, where it was hot, 90-plus degrees in October, and Fox says, oh, look, this series isn't so bad after all. That's a pretty stark contrast, don't you think? Now, I was a little bit curious. I wanted to know if Vin Scully frequently talked about the weather at the beginning of broadcasts, and so I took a look at a couple of other broadcasts. I didn't find many examples of that from his radio work, but I didn't search very far. However, I did find this from 1984.
Comiskey Park in Chicago, and the temperature at game time, a nippy 50 degrees, where it is much warmer, however, down on the field because a lot of sunshine and beautiful blue skies overhead. A light breeze out of the northwest translating, blowing in towards home plate from back of right center field.
And then there was this from 1985.
Rainy day, rain this morning, overcast skies, but the prospects of a dandy coming up.
All right, now, I don't know for a fact why Vin Scully would do this from time to time, but I can tell you that I'm an average person and I know what the weather is. If you tell me it's rainy, I know what that is. If you say it's cold, I know what that feels like. And if it's 90 degrees in October, I know what that means. That's engagement. That's something that the viewers, that the audience can latch onto. So that was point number 1. We have to make sure that we build engagement right from the start, and it should be positive engagement instead of saying it's not as bad as you thought. Now, point number 2 is to make it simple. This is going to be a slightly subtle point, but let's go take a look at this one at a time. We'll look at this small clip from 1988 first.
And if you sitting at home plan to keep score, it'll be very easy for you to know whether Hershiser is on his game. Number 1, there'll be a lot of strikes. And number 2, a lot of ground balls.
And now let's look at this from 2023.
And I'll talk about the field goal post as the strike zone tonight for both pitchers. 2-2. Below the crossbar?
Yeah, when you think about the field goal post, you think about the two going up uprights, and then you got the crossbar. And on the bottom of the zone is going to be the crossbar where each pitcher.
All right, I've been watching baseball my whole life. I've watched for 40 plus years now. I've never heard anybody talk about the field goal posts and the crossbar for each pitcher. I have no idea what he's talking about. You see how simple Scully made it? Look for him to throw strikes, look for a lot of ground balls, then you know he's on his game. Otherwise, you don't know. That's all you have to do. What is this with we're going to have field goal posts and all this other stuff? I mean, what sport are we watching? What are we even talking about? There's no visual on screen. I can't see it in my head. It's way too abstract and it's extremely distracting. So again, keep it simple. You need to keep it simple. Now, number 3 is to engage with your audience. We're going to look again at a quick clip from 1988.
He already received a big thrill tonight because the first pitch, the ceremonial first pitch, made by his mom and dad, Oral III and Millie Hershiser, the parents who were selected as the 1988 Parents of the Year by Little League Baseball. Now, is that a way to start the night in the World Series?
And now we'll look at this clip from 2023.
We saw a bunch of the stars deliver in last night's game, but there are still a couple stars for these lineups from throughout the year that have been missing in this postseason. We're talking Marcus Semien for the Rangers, Christian Walker for the D-backs, trying to get those guys going.
So the reason why I brought this up is because throughout the Fox broadcast, and really throughout the entirety of Fox's Major League Baseball broadcast, the human element has been missing. Instead of talking about the ball players as players, they've been paraded as superheroes, as larger-than-life stars. That was apparent throughout the entire Game 2 of the 2023 World Series broadcast. I mean, to the point where I felt like I didn't know any of them. In fact, not only were the players treated as not people, but rather characters, the setting itself was treated as just sort of a prop. If you watch these games, you can't tell if you're in Texas or Arizona or on the moon. Whereas NBC, thanks to the work of Harry Coyle, constantly showed a bunch of wide pan images of the stadium and gave you a better feel for the atmosphere. But the point here is that your audience and people know what it's like to have parents. But we probably don't know what it's like to try to inspire the other players on our team because we're playing in the superstar role. That's the point. Superstars, superheroes are things that we can't really relate to, but we can definitely relate to having our parents come out and watch us play. Now, number 4 is the one that's going to surprise you. Point number 4 is to relax. Again, we'll look first at 1988.
And here's the big guy now, Jose Canseco, who hit one of the more memorable home runs I think I've ever seen here. Fouls it away. Remember last night, the grand slam home run he hit? The velocity of the ball going out went on a straight line and actually hit the camera. Jimmy Mott, you see the dent right there where the ball hit. And Jimmy asked Jose Canseco, would you sign it for me? And there you have it. Jose Canseco, Grand Slam 88 World Series. He put a dent in the ball, in the camera, and in the game. What a player.
I'd like to see that on Jimmy's mantle.
1 ball and 1 strike.
And now let's contrast that with the closest thing I could find in the half inning of the 2023 broadcast.
I think it's so interesting, the narrative. You know, people won't admit it, but when the Rangers left here, I almost guarantee the majority of the fans here is like, we're not going to see him again until next year. When the Diamondbacks went to Philly, golly, I hope we see him again.
So I might be a little bit off board with this. It might just be me, but that 2023 World Series broadcaster feels kind of patronizing to me, right? Oh, well, they're not going to admit this, but when the Rangers last left this stadium, everybody thought the series was over, and with the Diamondbacks, oh, golly gee, we hope we see them again. What is he even trying to say? I don't understand. That's a lot different than the story about the camera being dented by the Jose Canseco home run, complete with the signature. Now, I know that you only have the stories that you're given. You can't really make something out of nothing. But the other thing you notice is that the Fox broadcasters seem to be so stiff with each other. They don't talk and joke and have any sort of jovial or happy atmosphere. It feels like I'm attending a board meeting at work, right? Contrast that again with Vin Scully and Joe Garagiola, where they're cracking jokes and they have little wisecracks and little interesting things that they're saying from place to place. Look, it's good to be relaxed. Relax when you do it and have fun. If you make a mistake, it's okay. We all make mistakes. And you know what? Making a mistake is something that we can relate to. That's a good form of engagement. So once again, the 4 points here are you want to build engagement from the start and you want to make it positive. You don't want to start off apologizing. It's ridiculous. You want to keep it simple. None of this, the crossbar of the field goal or whatever, if we're playing baseball, it doesn't make sense. What are you talking about? Keep it simple. He needs strikes. He needs ground balls. We understand what that is. You want to keep the audience in mind. Absolutely. You want to make sure that you're actually engaging with your audience at all times. That's the thing that is difficult because many of us get stuck in our own heads, right? The story is not the great story about the players. The story is about the people. Your audience presumably is made up of people and not superheroes. So tell us about the human aspect of the story and the human aspect of the person. Tell us about the kid who's trying to throw a shutout, against all the real big men around him who are heroes and legends that he grew up watching. Something like that. And then above all else, relax and have fun with it. Now, notice what I didn't say here. I didn't say you need to have the right, home run, thing that you say, whatever it is, the right home run call. You don't need to have the perfect voice. You don't even need the perfect microphone setup, right? None of that really matters that much, right? What really matters is that you learn how to engage with the audience and engage with the reader, and that you remember that we're telling stories. We're not just sharing box scores and sharing stats. Hope you enjoyed that. I'll talk with you tomorrow. Bye.